fortunate today to have Eric Beltz as our lecturer. And contrary to the flyer that I put up here, he's really not from USCB, the University of South Central Bakersfield. He actually got his BFA at Cal State Fullerton and his MFA at the University, UCSB here. I first saw his work in 2005 at the Contemporary Arts Forum. This really odd yellow drawings. How do you say that?
Hypnobotany.
Hypnobotany work. I was really taken by it. But 2 years later, I was in Los Angeles, spending a day with Marie looking at art, and we were in Chinatown, and we wandered over and we saw his show at Acuna Hansen, and it was unquestionably the best work of the day. Even the museum shows was his work. These phenomenal drawings that you're going to see. So personally, I'm really pleased that he's going to be here to show his work today. He's had solo exhibitions at Copland Del Rio in L.A., Morgan Lehman in New York, Rio Hondo College in Whittier, solo project at Pulse, New York, Acuna Hansen, Contemporary Arts Forum. His work has been reviewed in Art in America at least twice, New York Times.
3 times.
2 times, right? Oh, 4 times.
No, 3.
Oh, 3. I missed it. Sorry. 3 times. It's good to have that happen. LA Times, Art and Paper Magazine, The Village Voice, as well as a lot of others, including local papers. He's was given the award, the Pulse Prize at the Pulse Art Fair, 2009, 7, something.
I don't know.
Something
a few years ago.
His work has been reproduced in Flaunt magazine. You can go online and find this all at ericbeltz.com or any of these galleries I mentioned. He's in the collection of the Santa Barbara Museum of Art and others. Another great collection that you might be interested in is the Nerman Museum in Overland, Kansas. We think we've got one of the best city colleges in America, and we do. We know that we're in the top 10. Go online and look at the museum that they have at the junior college. It's a knockout facility. That's the next step we have to have at the school. Is the museum as beautiful as that one is. I'll just leave you with this, that Eric Beltz has referred to as exquisite graphic on Bristol work as high definition drawing. And indeed, Eric Beltz.
What? Oh, yeah. Dim.
It's just pushing a button, but I didn't think you could do it.
Okay. I feel weird now. Is there a glow on me? No. Thanks, Matilda. Hello. I'm Eric. It's great to be here. It's always nice to be forced to talk about your work in a group setting like this. And also, I can see every one of your faces, so there's people who start to fall asleep or checking their cell phones. I got my eye on you. I also teach at the university. I got my graduate degree there, and I've been teaching drawing there for now 6.5 years. And so anyway, that's that. If you like what you see, you want to take a drawing class, come on over. Although you got great teachers too. Okay, never mind. I'm already stepping on toes. Is it just this little button down here? Space bar. All right. Okay, here we go. I got it. Space bar's at the bottom. This is my studio. Thought I'd show you this picture. This picture, though, I titled The Empty Nest. This is right after I sent off a drawing to be shown somewhere, and this is a very sad picture to me. I don't like it when stuff's finished because it takes me a long time to do work. When it's gone, I don't feel excited, like, ooh, that's 3 months is over. I just feel really depressed. So this is a picture of my sadness. But it's also my studio. And then this is where I do my research. So you saw all the books around my easel. But I don't read by my easel because that's my sad place. So I go into my backyard, and then I drink beer and take notes. This is my backyard. And I have a collection of orchids and poisonous plants. That's a big one, too, as you can see in the upper left side. So that's a happy place. I lost the space bar already. Okay. Santa Barbara, for me, was really, I don't know what the word is for it, but it's like coming here about 10 years ago now kind of brought my work together. There's lots of different things that I was doing at the time, and things that I was... Matilda? This is the way it's going to be all day? Okay. coming out here, it really kind of brought things together. Stuff that I was observing in Orange County. I went to Cal State Fullerton. I lived in Orange County, and I worked in Los Angeles. And I spent a lot of time on the freeways, as you do when you live out there. And you're sitting in just like endless traffic that's barely moving. You kind of look around the sides of the freeway or whatever's around you. And I just started looking at these kind of dirty, gross places with weeds growing in them on the sides of the freeway. But, I'm going somewhere, so I couldn't like jump out of the car and go investigate it. So coming up here, there's a lot more places like that. There's places I call waste spaces. And when I did my graduate work was in the ditches on the sides of freeways and kind of these polluted spaces, waste spaces. It just became kind of a curious mix of nature and culture. This is across the street from my house. It's a drainage canal. It's Mission Creek, but it's really a drainage canal for sewage pollution. But again, it's a point of contact in sort of a semi-urban environment of nature of a certain sort, nature that's kind of unregulated or uncontrolled, right? Except for they come through and just whack everything down every once in a while to clear the channel. And this is another drainage canal by UCSB off of Glen Annie. And I was also investigating like traditions of landscape. When you live in California, you can't help but notice the landscape, and especially in a place like Santa Barbara, the landscape kind of imposes itself on you. So I was looking for opportunities to kind of engage the landscape in my environment, and it didn't take too long to kind of walk off the sidewalk into this drainage canal and kind of find a scene that you could see depicted by like a 19th century landscape painter of this kind of unknown area filled with verdant greenery. But I wanted to know more about the plant life. This is at UCSB. I didn't want it to just be kind of a field of greenery of the unknown. And the stuff that Dane was talking about that I showed at the Contemporary Arts Forum was kind of about the field that nature presents itself as, just a big kind of green mass. And the closer you get into it, the more you kind of notice the details and kind of get to know it, and then it becomes more meaningful. That's sort of the attitude of approach that I took. And so I took it upon myself to try to educate myself about the plants that are around me. Excellent book, by the way. It's not in a day. It's like every day you can study one of the pages, and then it's like, it takes 3 months or something. But there's some pretty easy diagnostics to figure out what the things are that I was looking at. There's another book that I used. So you can tell from the very first picture I have a book fetish. So I photograph the covers of my books too, because that's the fun part. Okay. And then, once I started studying the plants, that green field presented itself as lots of little bits of information. So I'd walk down a path and just see some greenery, and then I'd notice like poison oak growing, or some of the local morning glories. You can't quite tell, but the tall stuff there is Russian thistle. So this is behind where I used to live when I was in grad student housing at UCSB, and there's a slough right here. And every year there's a different species of thistle that grows. When I was first encountering it, it was all milk thistle, which is a really beautiful thistle that'll feature prominently in one of the first slides I have. This is Datura. This is kind of my keystone plant. Plant features a lot in a lot of my work. All the plants that I was noticing too, it was some I just identify and they have a use, like a dye or soap or something out of them. But the ones I was kind of more interested in were medicinal plants, or in this case, poisonous plants or psychedelic plants. That's not the space bar. Now what do I do?
Take the mouse and just click there. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I do need to watch where the space bar is. So in visiting these places, I was doing, pretty typical illustrations of the plants. Just gave me a time to kind of be with that plant, kind of get to know it, and just doing a drawing of it. This is Datura. Plus, imagine me. How do I go back? Oh, I know. Arrow. So I asked Caltrans, like, hey, how do I stop on the side of the road and take pictures of plants? Like, well, just get an orange vest and pull over with your flashers on. So that's what I did. So these drawings I'm doing, I'm sitting here one-on-one drawing the plants. So that's another thing. I thought about I did a plant drawing class. I thought we could do a field trip to the side of the freeway, but that sounded dangerous, so I decided not to. So yeah, this is drawings from 10 years ago. So these became, again, an opportunity for me to like spend time with a plant, kind of get to know it. I guess I can look at the screen. Get to know it visually, and then just be in that environment. I'll deter here. This is the seed pod, open seed pod. Deter is also known as thorn apple. That's the open seed pod. You can see the spikes on it. Pinecone. I'd also, bring some of these these plants home. This is the milk thistle. Take a cutting of it, and I just wanted to have like a relationship with the plants. Milk thistle is also currently being studied to create a medicine for liver disease. I'm having a lot of success with it. And I thought it's ironic that it grows in the slough behind Isla Vista, where all the sewer goes into, and everyone's drinking lots of beer. And then out of the beer pee comes milk thistle, which cures the disorders. That's the beauty of nature. Pee in the ground, and there you go. So then I started doing these kind of very literal illustrations of the plants that I was trying to have a relationship with. This one's milk thistle. And I look up its cultural history, its biochemistry, potent phytochemicals, its habitat, plus introduce the scenes of where I would find it. There's little suburban scenes and the waste-based channels that I'd be studying these plants in, associated plants. And then in mythology, that's where you get the text like hard work, suffering, deliverance. It's analogy or metaphors that are applied to the milk thistle plant. Relieves melancholy is one of the herbal kind of remedies of milk thistle. And from the center, I don't know if you can see it says from a stagnant liver. So it's, treats liver disease. One of the other things too, this tree stump with all the little plants on it, one of the things I encountered in doing my thesis, which was about psychedelic medicinal and poisonous plants that grow in waste spaces, is that in a forest situation, if a tree falls down, there's a canopy that's opened, or there's a hole in the canopy. And then around that tree, now there's suddenly shafts of light that are hitting there and rain that's not getting stuck up in the leaves. What grows in those spaces are weeds, but they're by and large medicinal weeds, because the chemicals in weeds that give us, that we react to, the bitter things, or alkaloids, that's the defense of that plant that's growing really quickly, trying to take advantage of this new resource that's been introduced in this area. Trees grow slowly, they have bark, Little herbaceous plants have these easy-to-create phytochemicals, these alkaloids. And so where you find disruptions in nature is where you find potent chemical-filled plants. So it's kind of an image that you'll see repeated throughout my work, is this chopped-down tree and weeds. This is close-up. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is all mechanical pencil, graphite on Bristol, on 4-ply cotton rag Bristol. I had a girlfriend once, and she lived in Los Angeles, but we stayed at this hotel, the St. Moritz on Sunset. Excellent place, $25 a night. I heard about it in a Tom Waits song. I got to try that. And it's horrible, blood splatters, cockroaches, but cheap. Anyway, the room that we got had a desk, a bed, and a dresser, and a bathroom. And I thought, this is all I want, I just want a little space. I don't want a lot of messy stuff. So I've kind of come back around to that. I like that I have a pencil and a piece of paper, and I like a lot of erasers, but that's it. I don't need a lot of messy stuff. So that's just me, though. So for me, investigating space also came about in the form of research of plants. This is a book that I used a lot, Back to Eden, by Jethro Kloss, who is a guy from Wisconsin who was a herbalist in the mid-20th century. And this is where I get a lot of the text, the relieves melancholy stuff, because it's kind of folk remedies, dealing with herbs and stuff. The Healing Forest is written by Richard Evans Schultes, who is kind of the grandfather? Step-uncle? Something, of ethnobotany, which is the study of plants, but their cultural application. And that's really what I'm interested in, is the cultural history of a plant. Peter First, who taught at UCLA, wrote this book that's also about the cultural context of plants, this specifically hallucinogens. This is a pre-Columbian Panamanian polychrome. You're looking at the top of a bowl. So if this were to be tipped on its side, it'd be a bowl like this, and it's got a little pedestal on it. And this is an image of it's a saurian humanoid figure in shamanic transformation. And so in looking at like what's the cultural contact point with nature, in Western culture, it's sort of the image and the other. In non-Western cultures, it is in some cases like a direct contact through the ingestion of plants. And so those were the cultures that I really became interested in, and that's where the Richard Evans Schultes and the Peter First stuff came in, because they're studying like Colombian, South American cultures that have embraced the use of hallucinogens and other healing herbal plants. And so, so I started with this. I was working at the Bowers Museum in Santa Ana. It's a cultural art museum. I was working very closely with their chief curator, Armand Lebay, who wrote the book that this came from. And it's all about this stuff I was just talking about, but that's somebody else's culture. That's not me, and I don't want to do something that's about somebody else's thing. I want it to be my thing. I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to go back to my house and figure out what's going on. So then I started looking at things from my cultural context as Christianity, and it's like, that is an awesome Jesus. He's like shooting laser beams out of his head and his hands, and which is more like the tingunas, these shapes here, that are like energy rays zapping out of the shaman. And it's like, cool, I could do something with this stuff now, because I'd always wanted to have, when I was going to Presbyterian church as a kid, I always wanted to have like that experience, like, what am I here for? I'm here to like talk to God or whatever, or have somebody tell me about what God's saying. But I never had that. One of the other things I thought was really beautiful, is it doing it?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't see it from this angle, from my anamorphosis angle. One of the beautiful things about this artwork, too, is that, it's so-called primitive work, whatever, but if you look at the pattern that creates the snake spirals and the bladder acid thing, and then look at the nature of the hooked barbs that go around the figure and the coloration, they're very similar, You think about being in a situation where you're not seeing a lot of pictures of things, and then you're shown something maybe quickly or maybe, in a certain ritual context, and it's going to have this sort of like special effects effect. So anyway, whatever. I like this stuff. This is some of the hypnobotany stuff that I was doing. That's trying to like kind of bridge the gap between all these things. This is poison hemlock, which grows a lot around here. Whenever you see like a big fluffy green plant with this kind of umbrella of white flowers, looks like Queen Anne's lace. If it's got purple striations on it, it's poison hemlock. It's not Queen Anne's lace. So don't eat it because you'll die. This is Pablo Amaringo, who was a Peruvian shaman who quit being a shaman because he was losing. He was in a battle with another shaman, but the other shaman was winning. So he quit, and then he just teaches painting to kids. And he does these illustrations of his experiences as a shaman. I'm not going to show you any of my work. Maybe like one or two. That's going to all be... No, I'm just kidding. It's a medieval illustration of a saint. One of the diagnostic features of pre-Columbian forms, if it's like a shaman in trance, is that they have these like concentric ring eyes with like little pupils like that. So I look at these, I look at the other culture and I think, I wish that was this. And so I'm looking at this as like a shamanic form. He's not a saint, which can be kind of an abstract notion. He's like this sorcerer. This is a podium. And then these are, the illustration on the right is a folk illustration of the Brugmansia tree, which I showed you that I have in my backyard. And if you fall asleep underneath it, or if you're sick and you sit underneath the Brugmansia tree, this eagle comes by and steals your soul away. And in Colombia, they're planted in cemeteries because they're associated with a spirit that conducts the souls from this life to the afterlife. And so I read that first, and then I came across this book on Hawaiian botany, and there's this idiot botanist sitting underneath the Brugmansia tree, and I thought, like, they're in the same position, like sitting with the knees, they're both like slightly tilted to the left, It's just, I like, and in Orange, where I grew up, there's lots of Brugmansias in everyone's front yard. So it's an ancient cultivar. There's no known native or non-cultivated species of it because it's been in cultivation for thousands of years. So I liked, walking down the little suburban street, and it's like, that plant, like, don't sit underneath that, but it's just in a really benign context. So this is my rendering. This is called the Tree of the Evil Eagle. And again, in kind of mashing two different cultures together, this is the scene of the prayer of George Washington at Valley Forge when they were getting their asses kicked by the British, and they're covered in snow and have no food in the winter in outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And there's sort of some famous images that I'll show you in a second of George Washington kind of asking God for help and to save the troops. In my scene, he's sitting in a weed patch. There's the chopped down trees, and there's, well, these are mostly just medicinal weeds. He's holding a foxglove sprig, and he's like, asking for help. But what he's got is he's conjured up the tree of the evil eagle and this other kind of malevolent spirit. So sort of like, be careful what you ask for, and you kind of, ask the spirits for help, and you don't know what you're going to get. Here's a close-up of George. This is a younger Washington. And the text that I get is from, a lot of times in this work, this is called the American Vision series. A lot of this stuff comes from like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or the Think Before You Speak. If you can read that, goes over George Washington. That came from a book that he rewrote in a way to learn etiquette of how to be a proper young British subject. So the Think Before You Speak thing comes from George Washington. Also, don't blow on your soup, because that's rude. That's also George Washington. And there's the evil eagle. This one's 30 by 40 inches. That's as big as you can get in Bristol, because that's as big as Bristol gets. I've tiled together pieces. So there's my bookmark that's in my studio of the prayer at Valley Forge of George Washington. So again, kind of like taking something from a historical context and putting my own spin on it, kind of imagining how it would be cooler to me. I always hated history in school because I can't remember anything out of context. Nothing I can remember out of context. And plus, who wants to study wars? I'd rather study like the history of food and then find out about the wars around them, So for me, looking for like visionary moments, hallucinogens in history, these kinds of quasi-religious or mythical moments, those are ways that I can kind of go into history, and it means something to me already. I have a reason to be looking at it, This is a catalog I got at Valley Forge when I went there. I hate Philadelphia. Sorry. I spent too long there. And there's me as George Washington at Valley Forge. You got to go experience the history. But so I find by and large museums to be all the same, except for museums that are not in the big cities, because it's where you get to find more like idiosyncratic expressions of things. That's one of the resources that you get in being kind of just outside of Los Angeles. There's more interesting programming that tends to happen. And I like also historical museums because they have artifacts, and it's sort of like, here's a thing. You make something out of it. We'll tell you what it is, but, it's just here for you to look at. There's no, like, big thing around it. I look at these things because I'm looking for images that I can pull into my work as examples. So I take tons of pictures of these things. It's just their displays. I thought that's rad, a heart on a rifle with, like, an alligator face on the thing. And this is important because I did a thing with forks, and that forks only had 2 tines back in the 18th century. There's my 2-tine fork. I had 3 on there. If you saw the drawing in person, you'd see the 3rd tine on there. But when I went to Valley Forge, I realized that I'd screwed up. So I try to have like some historical accuracy in my work, even though it doesn't always work. This is a drawing called Fucked Up. And this is, let's see, the text at the top says, "For ye be they to whom our Lord shall shew great secrets." That's from the Bible. And so these are guys, all right. So Datura was that plant on the side of the road that I like a lot, and it's over there in the corner on the left. It's highly poisonous, also hallucinogenic, has a long cultural history, and its common name is Jimson weed. Well, Jimson weed, the naming of that came from a corruption of Jamestown weed. And during Bacon's rebellion in the 18th century, these soldiers went over to quell the rebellion. And on the way there, they scavenged for a salad. I don't know why soldiers would eat a salad, but I guess they just were looking for edible greens, accidentally ate a bunch of datura, and then were all freaking out for like 3 days and never made it to Bacon's Rebellion. And so in the back I've got Jamestown, Virginia burning, and these guys are just sort of tripping out in the wood lot around the weeds. And they're all being visited by their spirit animals. So there's the turkey vulture in the middle, crow, and then a hummingbird in the back. And then the star shooting out of the fork is one of those, what's it called when doctors come up with little songs to remember things? What? Yeah, exactly. So this one is blind as a bat, mad as a hatter, red as a beet, hot as a hair, dry as a bone, the bowel and bladder lose their tone, and the something, damn it, and the heart runs alone. It's tachycardia. Anyway, so I try to make these kind of like little spiral things with this medieval script with these. And then it says, be careful what you eat when you're on the road. So this is, again, like, this is an actual historical thing. And when you look up Jimson Weed, Jamestown Weed, there's always the same little, like, one paragraph about it. And so that's my illustration of it, trying to make it more fun. There's Eva Mendes standing in front of my work. There's Fucked Up on the right. And Eva Mendes in the middle. And then Good Luck Assholes is on the other side. And this is Thomas Jefferson. So I'm really interested in origin myths. You know, like the thing that you inherit has, a lot of things you inherit have been around for a long time, and they kind of get touched by everybody who had it before you. And sometimes you lose like the immediacy of it. So I try to want to look back at the beginnings of things. You know, before religion, mythology. Before that was shamanism. So, what does it mean to be an American? We'll look at the beginning of the origins of America. So at that time, I was, in addition to reading about the hallucinogenic plants, I was reading the writings of some of the so-called founding fathers. And one of the ideas I got from reading about Thomas Jefferson was that he was kind of a curmudgeonly asshole when he was finished with everything. And he's like, all right, you guys, it's up to you now. So this is him at his retirement home, giving us the send-off. My wife's family is from Wisconsin, and so we spend too much time there. But I've learned a lot about people who live in farmland. But I just really like vernacular architecture. So I do a lot of photographs of farms and stuff. Because, in addition to like landscape themes and this sort of like nature-oriented stuff, it's also about land use and how humans interact with land. It's not just like, frivolous taking drugs and stuff. I have, the cut down logs. This is a sawmill down the street from where they live. And so that stuff kind of literally finds its way into my work. This one's called The Good Land. And the Good Land is obviously that slogan that they came up with to call Goleta to promote it. And I think it's the 30s, 40s. They had like a contest to come up with a slogan for, yeah. Well, they live in eastern Wisconsin near Lake Michigan. It's Valders is where they live. Manitowoc's the biggest city there. It's like an hour and a half north of Milwaukee or Chicago. You're from that area? Yeah. Awesome. Whenever I meet people, there's always very young people in the bars there. I always ask them, do you want to stay here? Do you want to go? It's about 50-50. Anyway, so this is a scene of a kind of a farmer, woodsy guy gutting a deer. But it's in this situation, I'm trying to make it kind of like a religious experience. He's talking to the dead rabbit that's hidden in the snow. The text that's coming out of the rabbit, I don't know if you can see it, says, "Death, death, always death," which is a quote also from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So again, just looking at kind of like rustic American scenes, vernacular architecture, and still interested in this idea of where trees are cut down and our interactions with nature. I am dead and you shall die. Now, I like to pick things I want to draw too. I mean, I don't mean stabbing a deer in the neck, but I mean drawing fabric, wood patterns, animals. I just love drawing these things too. I love this book. So Walker Tompkins is a local historian, or was, and wrote a lot about local history, and so I've gotten a lot of stuff from this book. This is the first edition. This is called Holy Ambrosia, more kind of like vernacular architecture, rustic scenes. This is a like a militia guy in colonial America, but he's off in his wood pile where weeds grow, and there's, I don't know if you can see him, but there's like psychedelic mushrooms and stuff growing in there. This one's called By This Axe I Rule. And it says it's not always easy to attain an audience with the gods. So it's about kind of ritual sacrifice and, you know, honoring the life of the animals that you kill. And I just wanted to really draw this turkey vulture. The portrait of this guy is based on Gordon Wasson, who is also kind of an ethnobotanist, but he studied mushrooms. He's the guy who found magic mushrooms. Time magazine, 1957, wrote an article about him that coined the phrase magic mushrooms. It's about him and his partner went down to Mexico and studied ritual use of psilocybe mushrooms. This one's called Holy Fuck. I have a lot of bad words in my work, in case you didn't know. But I decided instead of, you know, being more obvious like in the earlier ones, I'd write the words backwards. That's what that is up there, in case you, it's not super obvious to you. But this idea of like obfuscation to create myth and ritual, right? It's a lot of myth is just taking what is easy to know, making it seem complicated so that you can kind of control your audience, like Deepak Chopra. No Deepak Chopra fans in here. Alrighty then. But this is a scene sort of in a woodlot behind the rural area where witches would hold their Sabbaths. And this is sort of like a kind of a ritual scene. There's sort of implied sexual, violent overtones to this. But it's more just exploring the themes of stuff that I come across, like witchcraft. There's some more farming scenes in the back. The image of the witches riding on a broom comes from the use of unguents on poles of wood and then rubbing them in armpits and genital areas, because alkaloids are fat soluble and they go quick into the bloodstream through the skin, and skin's thinnest in the genital area and in the armpits. So the idea was that the witch would rub the unguent on herself with the stick and then have visions of flight. And so whenever you see a witch on a broom flying, there you go. That's where that comes from. And then the hand signs are Indian Sign Language. And it's kind of a joke because there's a snake going into the hole and then it's rain. So it's about fertilization. So snake goes in the hole, makes it rain. All right. This one's my Vitruvian Man. It's called How to Identify Flowering Plant Families. And so, you know, the kind of generic thing that everybody knows about the Renaissance is that it was the humanist age, and man is the measure, whatever that means, right? But in mine, it's more of like plants are the measure that humans measure themselves by. And so this is also, again, about that kind of direct engagement with nature, not through the idea of the other, but of actually, you know, touching the plants or ingesting them and then letting them talk to you. And his extra arms are from hallucination arms. On my walks, I always take pictures of chopped down trees and roots exposed because, again, they kind of find themselves in my work because of that idea that when a tree falls down, there's this new forest that comes into being. This is called Timber Beast. So tree got chopped down, but that just sort of freed the spirit of the tree. This is Noah's shipwreck. Really interested in this in topiary also. And I've got another theme going in my work that's about like Noah's Ark. I've been reading a lot of the Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha, because there's not that much in the Old Testament about Noah, and kind of everybody knows about it. And again, I want to know what else I can do with these things. So apocryphal writings have non-canonical stories about these things that we all know about, and they're kind of more richer in detail and stuff, and kind of have kookier things in them. So anyway, this is Noah's sailboat. And the way that I'm thinking about it is that Noah lives in this sort of bleak, snowy landscape. He represents, a post-apocalyptic figure, right? God destroys the world and just saves him and his wife and his kids and people. And so I'm imagining Noah as this sort of like crazy guy who thinks he's talking to God. He lives out in the woods, and he's just like beheading animals and sticking them in this little topiary sailboat that he's made in his backyard. So he's like, he missed the point a little bit. That's a close-up. I tried to do topiary with local species. This is poison oak. The people in my apartment complex didn't like it because they're like, whatever. But the thing is that everybody knows the same wrong things about poison oak. Like, you can't get near it because it off-gases. Or if you just look at it funny, you're going to get whatever, But I handled my poison oak successfully with no gloves the entire time that I had it. And, the thing is that if you touch poison oak and you don't get a reaction to it, it could be you just didn't touch the oil that is what gives you the reaction, but it could also be that you aren't yet allergic to it. The more you touch poison oak, the more you build up an allergy to it. So either I didn't touch the oil, which is what I suspect, because they're my plants. I could see the oil. You can touch the leaf. You can do anything you want with it, as long as you don't break the skin open or break the branch open. So as soon as there's a little bit of juice that comes out, that's the thing that's toxic. There's no gas coming out of it. But the gardener gods decided that they wanted to chop a branch off, ironic, and it smashed and destroyed my topiary. Poison oak is a beautiful, beautiful plant. It has a very particular type of odor to it. It has very delicate little white flowers and these little fuzzy stems. It's an amazing plant. I had to drive down to, it's near Casper Canyon, which is inland from San Juan Capistrano. There's a commercial nursery down there that does habitat restoration, and they sold poison oak. I've always been meaning to get more of it. But my backyard's really small right now. My wife doesn't want any more poisonous plants in there. I also tried to grow a topiary with the local morning glories. But morning glories don't like to be topiaryized. If they are growing a tendril out this way and you wrap it around something else, that tendril just dies and it sends more off the way it wanted to go the whole time. So there's nothing you can do to morning glories to get them to do what you want them to do. They're always just going to go up. They'll never go anywhere but up. They didn't like it. So again, these are just sort of again, I guess what I said before was that I first was looking at other cultures, learning from them. I want to see my own culture in a new way. I also am looking at my environment. How can I bring those things into my work? So, sort of the same kind of thing, these leafless trees, logs. That's one of my dogs. That's Fergus. He's a black schnauzer. Moments of nature in my environment. This is just a stream at Alice Keck Park. Another drainage canal. And then again, these kinds of things just find themselves into my work. And growing up in suburban areas, I think it's not that hard to understand why there's a lot of lowbrow art that comes out of Orange County, tattoos and hot rods and stuff like that, because the environment itself is pretty bland and boring, and you have to live in your mind. I've kind of brought that habit with me. So when I'm walking my dogs and I see a leafless tree that has all its branches chopped off, my mind starts thinking, okay, what can I do with that? What is that? What other narrative potential can I put into it? And this one is, okay, so I got the Noah thing, post-apocalyptic crazy guy, but who also survived the flood was Medusa. So Medusa and Noah are going to have a love affair. That's a series I haven't quite done yet. But I kind of look at them both as post-apocalyptic characters. You get near Medusa, you're dead. So in these ones, this is called Medusa's birdhouse. There's gargoyles carved into the branches, and there's stone gargoyles around the base of the rocks, so they're kind of like hidden in there. There's one. There's another one. And there's like fish and dead things swimming around in the water and skulls. So in my rendering, Medusa has some kind of special relationship with birds, but then all the animals that the birds might feed on, they'll come to the poison oasis and die. And so the birds can live. I know, I'm just making it up, but it's called Medusa's stump. It's a falcon eating an exploded rabbit. And there's another dead rabbit falling into the poison oasis. There's a Basquiat painting called Poison Oasis. That's cool. More logs and gargoyles and kind of this sort of snowy, it's like either, is it a snowy landscape or is it like a post-nuclear landscape? I like this sort of idea of a voided landscape with nothing in it. Oh, that's a cover of Flaunt magazine that I did. That's my jar of pennies. This one's called Fuck It. So kind of bouncing around. This is also from the American Vision series. And it's a portrait of John Adams. Sort of, he was also a curmudgeon. So you endure, you suffer, and then you die. Fuck it. There's a guy emailed me. I get these every now and again. He's like, oh, man, do you have any images of the goose? I want to get that tattooed on me. I'm like, okay. That's weird. It's a quote from John Adams. While conscience claps, let the world hiss. It's all about, following your own inner voice, I guess, which is about the psychedelic experience, too, in a way. Obviously, freedom is a pretty obvious theme from American history. It's also a piece that I did for Flaunt magazine before that. I don't know if any of you want to be illustrators. I thought I wanted to be an illustrator when I was an undergrad, but I can't take direction, and it's because I just don't want to do it. So, but they came to me. They said, "We like your work. We're doing this article about state versus federal rights on marijuana laws, and we thought your work you could do something for it. Do us something." And I'm like, "Okay, you gonna pay me?" They said, "Yeah." All right, I'm in. So this is like a colonial soldier, because that's what I was doing at the time. He's smoking out of a tomahawk pipe, which is cool. And he's got this caduceus forming out of him, visionary caduceus, these two snakes wrapping around what's a marijuana branch. And then the bald eagle, symbol of the federal government, is like snatching one of the snakes, keeping it from fully forming. So that I was going to have like a bear pulling his guts out as like the state thing, but I couldn't find a place for the bear in there, so I edited him out. And then, putting these pieces together, I have like an idea. Okay, I'm going to have this scene, and I've got to find text to go around it. And the arcing text that goes between pain and grief, and then comes out of the cannabis, and then down at the bottom, all come from the Bible, and they all are talking about enduring suffering, appealing to God, and then eventually having an experience where you feel like you're connecting with that spiritual other. So that's where the sequence, the pain, grief, and delight comes from, and it reflects what the text is if you could read it. And then the always remember to thank a person who has gotten you high came from a stoner's book of etiquette. I thought was apropos. The other one I was thinking about was like, he who brings the weed chooses the music. But that didn't seem edgy enough, or, seemed too light. And this piece is called One Hit Shit, and that's around the cannabis. This is a booth. Dane mentioned Pulse. So art fairs are where people go to buy lots of art. Some people do. But it's also a place where you can go to see a lot of art. And it's basically a giant swap meet with little booths set up. And the galleries rent the booths for like tens of thousands of dollars and then hang art in it. And I did a solo booth project. This is the one that won the Pulse Prize. Pulse is actually going on Thursday, I think it opens in New York. And there's art fairs that happen all over the country and all over the world, like every day now. So this is a wallpaper that I did.
So was it
this wallpaper?
How do you do it?
Hell no. I have high quality images of the work, and then I just made a grid, poked it in there in Illustrator, and sent off the giant file to a printer. So this is printed on vinyl. And those are some of the hypnobotany images. There's a datura pentagram with more of that poison oak or poison hemlock around it. This is a hemlock pentagon. There's only 2 in there. Those images were in the center of those pieces that you saw at the CAF. This is a booth from a couple years ago at Pulse, and there's Holy Fuck hanging there. And then off to the left is Deep Shit. I debated whether or not to use the word shit. There's some bad words that are sexier than others, and shit's not one of them. And I noticed that, like, depending on what bad word I slip into my work, it'll sell faster or shorter. Or if there's no bad words in it, then they don't sell as quick at all. They like even longer. So they want bad words, just the right ones, and if there's none in there, they're not sure what they're supposed to do with it. So, I bought, because I love books, I bought this, like, 18-volume Time Life fake leather-bound series of books that were on, like, the Old West. And in almost every single one of them is a picture of some, like, settler who was attacked by Indians and had his, like, penis cut off and was filleted and have a bunch of arrows sticking out of him. I thought, oh, man, I got to do something with that. So that's my guy. I just carefully took his skin off, so he's very neat and orderly, but he's stuck with arrows. And this is Medicine Bottle, who was a Indian in one of those books. And this picture of him I got from him right before he was hung. But in this scene, he's alive. He's in a visionary state. He's going through a healing ceremony, and he's trying to conduct the soul of the settler who he just brutally murdered off to the afterlife to, like, you know, no hard feelings, just please get out of here, you know, kind of a thing. And then he's speaking, God damn your shit-filled soul. So he's still angry. And there's some datura down there. Oh, and there's more of the... Yeah. So, you know. I make jokes like that. Plus, I put a lot of allusions to color in my work. I'll put the words of color. And one of the last pieces I'm going to show you has rainbows in it. People are always asking me, when are you going to put color in your work? And I say, I don't know. This is a wall installation. Same booth at Pulse from a couple years ago.
Did you draw that tree?
Yeah, this charcoal, fine charcoal. This is how I usually work in art fairs. Here's my work. It's Andrew Schultz, the big tree, and then what's the face out there. So this is how my whole gallery's here. So you can walk through there and go, oh, there's the artist that shows at that place. And then you walk to the next booth, and the next booth could be a gallery that was from like 20 blocks away or from a different state altogether. So it's a really good way to see a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. As an artist, it's a little weird because you're just looking around like, come on, buy my work. Somebody buy my work. And they just recently did an online art fair, which is even worse because it's just like thumbing through a catalog and like your prices are right next to your work, and it's like, I don't know, it's a little weird. Okay, so wine. We live in Santa Barbara. Wine is lame. Noah brought me to wine. Well, Santa Barbara brought me to wine. First, I got into orchids, because that's what everyone's into in Santa Barbara. Then I got into wine. And Noah, one of the first things he did once he found land was, I just get into the good stuff. Fuck. All right. The first things he did was, once he got to land, somehow, instantly, he planted a vineyard and got drunk. That guy had some wine with him. This is the Egyptian image of wine grapes. So, you know, there's only so far you go with certain subjects. I started with, like, plant-based hallucinogens, but now I'm kind of looking more at alcohol. Because it's also in comparing, like, non-Western cultures or non-American cultures, well, non-Western cultures to Western cultures. There's this, like, real edge. Like, we'll accept alcohol, but we don't embrace hallucinogens. So now I'm looking at alcohol as kind of a replacement for those sorts of themes. And this is called Drunk Jesus Calendar. This was going to be Noah, but I decided to make it Jesus because as I was doing it, it just turned into Jesus. So my Jesus is a naked hippie out in the vineyard who's getting drunk. But since he's Jesus, when he drinks the wine, he imagines and can feel, has a visionary experience of every step of its process. Also, when I was thinking of this, and actually what turned it into Jesus and not Noah was that I was at Stoltman wine tasting in Los Olivos, and they have a wine called La Croce because they have this big cross in the vineyard, but it's not a cross, it's a raptor perch. So when you chop down trees, predatory birds have nowhere to survey the land, and so instead of spraying pesticides, they've built these raptor perches, or getting rid of the vermin other ways. They've built these raptor perches so that predatory birds can survey the ground and eat the gophers and the rats, and they don't have to spray. So it's like looking for mythology and religious experiences in kind of the contemporary world. And then there's like obvious symbols like the barbed wire, crown of thorns. There's Jesus. And that's it's called the calendar because it's a sequence of the events in a winemaking year. And this is a picture of Jesus from a sculpture by Raphael when he's dead on the cross. But in mine, he's just sleeping because he's drunk. Here's the calendar. I wanted to introduce more like pattern work also into my drawings to kind of give a new element. Every time I do a new drawing, I want there to be something new and something that I haven't drawn before. This is Buddha Zodiac. When I was doing Drunk Jesus calendar, I was thinking of doing a companion piece with Buddha. And this is it. This is Buddha Zodiac. So this is Buddha is sitting at the beach and he's drinking out of this bottle that says spirits, and there's a little pre-Columbian Panamanian saurian coming out of it. And my last show I did was called Spirits, and again, it's about alcohol, spirits, but also spirits like phantoms. And he's sitting with his dogs, and he's just getting drunk at the beach and having a visionary experience, and he's saying goddamn. His little halo says goddamn above his head. I've also included with this one a progress shots. Whenever I'm working on these things, they take forever. This piece took like 5 months to do. And partly that's because I work and I can't spend 12 hours every day on these pieces, but also it's just because they take forever. So what I do just to help myself is I take a picture at the end of every day of what I did that day. And it helps me too. I have an undo button on my drawing. So if I move something around and I forget what I've done, I want to make it better. Then I just look at my images from a couple days ago and I go, oh, that's what I was doing. So here's how they start. That's neat. Doop. It's all gone. So they start fairly loose. And I have a pretty clear idea. Like I want a thing in the middle, I want like a rainbow on top, and I want stuff around with some dogs at the bottom. And then the long journey begins. And I start working out the compositions and making sketches. I start right on the Bristol. I don't do sketches on other things, although I do now, but I didn't here. Bristol's great if you're indecisive like me because it can handle a lot of erasing. It also helps to have more of a dynamic presence online because if I get one new drawing on my website every 6 months, people forget about it. So this way there's a reason to kind of revisit me every week or whatever. That's why I have a Facebook page. I first got a MySpace page to spy on my sister and tell her when she wasn't in school when she should be. So at a certain point, I kind of work out basic compositional issues. Oh, by the way, those 3 hands there, no one's asked me about this. I don't know why, but those 3 hands on there are, here's a church, here's a steeple, open it up, see all the people. So, but in his case, when he opens up the people, he explodes his body. I have shadow puppets and Indian Sign Language and other stuff in my work. And the quote in the stars says, all things near or far, hiddenly to each other linked are, that thou canst not stir a flower without troubling of a star. And that came from a book on the history of herbals, but was a quote by a 19th century British poet who was also an ascetic and an opium addict. But I got that from a technical book. So then at a certain point, I've worked out most of the composition, and then it's just party time.
Is this your favorite part, party time?
No.
Okay.
I hate every step of the way. It's like, why can't it just be over? And like when I'm done, I'll look at my progress shots. I get to this point, I'm like, I wish I could just hit the forward button. And I know someday I will be able to, like right now. No, because like, you know, there's Tuesday and there's the end of Monday. You know, it's not a lot that gets done. I imagine it'd be like when you're in prison and you're chipping away a rock. When that rock is huge, you're like, this is going to take forever. When you get that rock halfway done, you're like, I've done a lot. I'm in it. So when you get to a certain point, then if you can see how what you do every day actually is doing something. This one, too, I just always wanted to draw a grayscale rainbow. A grainbow. No. The Good Land Kitchen in Goleta has a grainbow salad. It's disgusting. I do not accept your pun.
You will have my pun.
I reject your pun. Again, more patterning stuff. And when you look at this in person, the ribs shooting off the Buddha really buzz visually. I want the work to be authentic. It's an analogy for having a visionary experience, but I want it to also be really pretty and sparkly. It's not just a reference to sparkly imagery. It is sparkly imagery. That's one of the other challenges of working just in grayscale. People ask me, why don't you do color? Well, because sometimes color is easy. It gives you an easy out. I want something pretty, I make it bright, right? How do you make something pretty out of gray? It's hard. The Buddha head came from a sun ceramic decoration I saw on someone's gate when I was walking the dogs once. I thought, oh, there's my Buddha head. Because I always wonder, what I can't use just random identities in my work. It has to be something like a historical figure, or that's why they're just skulls, because it's not about anybody in particular. And like Buddha, I don't know, I'm not a Buddhist. What can I do? And somehow the sun head seemed to work.
What are the dogs for?
They're Shih Tzus. So I really just want to do drawings of dogs, but I can't because that's maybe not the greatest thing ever. So this drawing is just about me being able to draw dogs. So I look up, I wanted to give Jesus a dog, but there's no dogs associated with Jesus that I could come up with. And there's no dog with Jesus. So St. Francis is the next one. He's got this wolf story that's awesome. And there's the finished piece. So that was, I did the initial sketch in April, and then I was working on other stuff until about September, and I finished it in February. So it's a long fucking process. This is the last bit of work that I'll have to show for you. This is stuff called Elementary Forces, and it's based on colonial samplers. And again, the stuff that Dane was talking about, that I referred to a couple of times, the hypnobotany stuff, was really meant, the yellow ones were meant to have a buzzy visual effect, and I want to keep that up. And so these sampler kind of pattern drawings are a way to kind of return to this subject matter of kind of optically buzzy, but it's really simple pixelated patterns. I used to make a shirt called, anyway, never mind. This one's called Soul Mirror, and this is large. This is 30 by 40. It's not that large. And this is just, I forget what it is now, but it's something like 40,000 little gray squares I did in the middle. And when you look at it, it kind of, because your brain's always seeking patterns, and if there is no actual pattern, it'll temporarily make little patterns up. And so when you look at this, even though it's just like a Photoshop background, because there's little variations of the tones of gray, there's little pieces kind of come out at you. And so that's why I'm calling it soul mirror, you're looking, how would you do a drawing of a mirror, This is my attempt at doing a drawing of a mirror. This is a companion piece to it. This is from Drag Me to Hell. Has anybody seen that fantastic Sam Raimi film? It's a couple heading to Santa Barbara from Los Angeles, but they never make it. Anyway, they have a seance, and they're trying to invoke the Lamia to put it into a goat so they can sacrifice it and then kill the spirit. And they're all chanting, I welcome the dead into my soul. I welcome the dead into my soul. So, anyway, this is me. This is a quote sort of by Tolstoy, but I got it from the Walter Tompkins book on the history of Goleta. And you can't see it, but, well, maybe you can, but there's little swastikas hidden in the pattern around the border. And there's been swastika patterns that have emerged in my work, particularly with the botanical pattern stuff. But, you know, it's sort of an image that I kind of come back to in different graphic forms just because it has a long cultural history. It's, you know, there's obvious sort of breaks got hit with it at a certain point. But I still sort of sneak it in there because I can't help myself. And here's my dogs. All right. Thanks, everybody.